Love the Ravens as much as we do? Then smash that subscribe button and stay locked in with Flock News for all the drama, updates, and excitement all season long. The rumors coming out of Baltimore this week are nothing short of explosive, and fans are already debating if this could be the beginning of a serious crisis inside the Ravens locker room. Reports have surfaced claiming that head coach John Harbaugh has made it clear he no longer wants DeAndre Hopkins on the roster. That's right, the veteran wide receiver, one of the biggest names in the NFL over the last decade, might suddenly find himself pushed out of a team that many believed was building towards a championship run. Now, to understand the gravity of this situation, you need to realize how shocking this is for fans. Hopkins was supposed to be the missing piece for the Ravens offense, a proven receiver to help Lamar Jackson stretch the field and give Baltimore the type of aerial attack they've been lacking. Instead of stability, the move now looks like the spark for a storm. The idea that Harbaugh has supposedly lost faith in Hopkins has spread like wildfire, igniting speculation not only about their relationship, but about what this could mean for the team's future. And let's be real, once these kinds of stories start, it's hard to put out the flames. As the whispers grow louder, fans are beginning to piece together what could have led to such a dramatic fallout. Some insiders are suggesting that it all started with behind-the-scenes tension regarding Hopkins' role in the offense. According to these sources, Hopkins was reportedly frustrated with the way he was being used, feeling that his skills weren't being maximized in Baltimore's scheme. Meanwhile, Harbaugh, known for his no-nonsense approach, may have grown increasingly impatient with Hopkins' vocal dissatisfaction. Put those elements together, and suddenly you've got a recipe for confrontation. On one side, you have a coach who has been the steady hand of the franchise for years, trusted by management and adored by players for his consistency. On the other side, you have a superstar wideout who came in with sky-high expectations but may not feel like the system is designed to highlight his strengths. And when both egos collide in a high-pressure environment like the NFL, the outcome is rarely peaceful. The speculation suggests that this dynamic boiled over to the point where Harbaugh is now ready to move on, shocking as that sounds. But it doesn't stop there, because once rumors like this leak, people start asking the really tough questions. If John Harbaugh truly wants Hopkins gone, then what does this say about the Ravens' direction as a team? Are they still fully committed to giving Lamar Jackson the weapons he needs to succeed, or are they reverting back to the run-heavy identity that has defined them for years? Fans are divided right now, with some blaming Harbaugh for being too rigid and unwilling to adapt his playbook, while others argue that Hopkins has simply not been the same player in recent seasons. The truth might lie somewhere in the middle, but in the world of professional football, perception matters just as much as reality. The optics of a star coach essentially rejecting a star player are disastrous for a franchise that wants to present itself as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. This creates the impression of dysfunction, whether that's the reality or not, and that perception can quickly become a distraction that derails an entire season. And of course, when a situation like this arises, the conversation always turns toward the locker room. Players notice everything. They see the body language, they hear the chatter, and they know when tension exists between a coach and a teammate. If Hopkins feels unwanted and the rumors are true, how does that affect Lamar Jackson, who was reportedly excited about having Hopkins as a target? Does this shake Lamar's confidence in the organization's commitment to surrounding him with talent? Chemistry is fragile, and one crack can quickly spread. Insiders are saying that while some players are trying to stay neutral, others may already be taking sides, which only deepens the divide. Once you have factions forming in a locker room, it's no longer just about football. It becomes about trust, loyalty, and belief in leadership. If Harbaugh can't get the entire roster aligned behind his vision, the Ravens could be facing a season filled with drama instead of dominance. And let's be honest, nothing derails a championship window faster than internal strife. Another layer to this story is the business side of football, which always hovers in the background of these controversies. DeAndre Hopkins is not a cheap player. He's a big name with a big contract, and that means the front office is inevitably tied into this rumor. If Harbaugh has truly told management he doesn't want Hopkins, then the front office has a massive decision to make. Do they back their long-standing, championship-winning coach who has brought stability to Baltimore for over a decade? Or do they side with the star player who was supposed to elevate their offense, but now might represent more trouble than he's worth. Financial considerations, locker room harmony, and public perception all come into play. Fans, meanwhile, are already speculating on potential trade destinations, throwing out names of teams that could swoop in and snag Hopkins if he becomes available. The ripple effects of a decision like this go way beyond the Ravens, because Hopkins is still a player with name recognition who can generate buzz across the league. At the heart of all this is the question of what's really true and what's just rumor, because let's face it, the NFL thrives on this kind of drama. Until Harbaugh or Hopkins goes on record, everything we're hearing is based on whispers, leaks, and speculation. But that doesn't stop fans from running wild with their theories. Some believe this is just a classic case of media blowing things out of proportion, while others are convinced there's fire behind the smoke. What makes it so captivating is that it feels plausible. Hopkins hasn't looked completely at ease in Baltimore, and Harbaugh is known for being a tough personality when it comes to discipline and expectations. Put those puzzle pieces together, and you can easily imagine tensions boiling over. And in the NFL, where narratives shift week to week, the idea of a superstar wide receiver suddenly finding himself on the trade block is the kind of headline that dominates sports talk shows, podcasts, and social media for days on end. This story, whether true or not, has already taken on a life of its own. Now let's dig deeper into what this rumor could mean for DeAndre Hopkins himself. Because if John Harbaugh has indeed made up his mind, then Hopkins' future in Baltimore is hanging by a thread. Think about it. Hopkins came to the Ravens with the expectation of reviving his career and proving to the league that he still has elite-level production left in the tank. For years, he has been considered one of the most reliable receivers in the NFL, a guy who could make any quarterback look better with his hands and route running. But now, after only a short stint in Baltimore, the talk is that he may already be on his way out. That puts Hopkins in an awkward position. If he stays, he's stuck in a locker room where his head coach allegedly doesn't want him. If he goes, he risks being branded as a difficult player who couldn't fit in, no matter how talented he is. For a veteran nearing the later stages of his career, that's a dangerous label. Hopkins needs to protect his reputation just as much as his playing time, and this rumor, true or not, casts a big shadow on both. When it comes to Harbaugh, the conversation shifts to leadership and longevity. John Harbaugh has been the face of the Ravens culture for well over a decade, and his reputation as a player's coach has often been one of his greatest strengths. That's why this rumor stings so much for fans. It goes directly against the idea that Harbaugh is the guy who can manage big personalities and keep his locker room unified. If he really wants Hopkins gone, then maybe the cracks in that image are starting to show. Some analysts are suggesting that this situation could mark a turning point for Harbaugh's tenure. Not because he's on the hot seat, but because it exposes the reality that even long-standing coaches can struggle to mesh with certain star players. It raises questions about whether Harbaugh is flexible enough to adjust his style for modern NFL offenses that demand creativity and strong relationships with skill players. If Hopkins is gone, fans might start wondering who's next and whether Harbaugh's hardline approach will continue to cost Baltimore valuable talent in the long run. And we can't forget about Lamar Jackson, because ultimately, he's the centerpiece of this franchise and the one most affected by any shakeup. When Hopkins joined the Ravens, the narrative was that Lamar finally had the kind of target who could elevate his passing game and silence the critics who still question his ability as a pure pocket passer. Now, if Hopkins is pushed out the door, what message does that send to Lamar? Does it suggest that the Ravens still don't trust him enough to build a passing-first offense? Or worse, does it create tension between Lamar and Harbaugh, who has always been his biggest supporter but now might look like he's holding the offense back? For a quarterback who just signed a massive contract and is supposed to be entering his prime, this kind of instability could be disastrous. You never want your franchise quarterback questioning whether his team is truly behind him, and the Hopkins drama, whether exaggerated or not, threatens to plant those seeds of doubt at the worst possible time. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. The ripple effect doesn't just stay within the Ravens, either. The NFL is a league of constant movement, and as soon as whispers of a player becoming available hit the airwaves, other franchises start circling. Imagine what would happen if Hopkins actually hit the trade block. Teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, who are always hungry for another weapon to pair with Patrick Mahomes, or the Buffalo Bills, who could use another veteran presence alongside Stephon Diggs, would almost certainly be interested. Even squads like the New England Patriots, desperate for star power on offense, could take a swing. The market would be wild, because even if Hopkins isn't at his absolute peak anymore, his name alone carries value, and in the right system, he could still be dangerous. That kind of chatter creates even more tension in Baltimore, because now the narrative shifts from Hopkins isn't working here to Hopkins could make another contender stronger. And for Ravens fans, the thought of seeing him succeed elsewhere while Baltimore deals with the fallout would be painful. One detail fueling this entire rumor is timing. The Ravens are heading into a critical stretch of their season, and drama like this could not come at a worse moment. Teams that want to compete for championships need stability, focus, and alignment from top to bottom. Instead, Baltimore is now dealing with headlines that have nothing to do with the field and everything to do with speculation. The worst-case scenario is that these whispers become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Hopkins starts to feel more alienated, the locker room gets distracted, and suddenly the Ravens are dropping games they should have won. It's the type of storyline that derails even the most talented rosters. And what makes it worse is that even if this rumor has no truth, the simple existence of it forces players and coaches to answer questions they don't want to answer. Every press conference becomes about Hopkins and Harbaugh, not about the next opponent. That's the kind of distraction championship teams can't afford, and Baltimore knows it. At the end of the day, we're left with more questions than answers. Is this rumor exaggerated, or is there really a rift between John Harbaugh and DeAndre Hopkins? If it's true, will the Ravens pull the trigger on a trade, or will they try to patch things up behind closed doors? And perhaps most importantly, how will this affect the long-term trajectory of the franchise? Fans are buzzing, insiders are speculating, and social media is running wild with theories, memes, and heated debates. The Ravens have always prided themselves on being one of the most stable organizations in the league, but this kind of chatter threatens to undermine that reputation. Until someone goes on record, the truth will remain murky, but one thing is clear. This story isn't going away anytime soon. Every snap, every sideline shot, and every comment from Harbaugh or Hopkins will be dissected for clues. And whether it ends in reconciliation or separation, this rumor has already left its mark on the Ravens' season, shaping the narrative in ways the franchise never wanted. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.